First of all, thank you everyone for attending this workshop. Thanks, Josh, for contacting me and setting this up. At the beginning, it was supposed to be for a smaller group of people in Seattle, but I would have loved to do that, but due to the worldwide pandemic, I had to cancel. And Josh had the great idea of making the workshop online and open for more people and for free, which I think it's a nice thing to do, especially in the current situation we're all living in. Either way, it's a great pleasure for me to do this, and I hope that you'll find this workshop valuable and that it will help you create the career you want, because that's the whole point, right? I could have said help you be a successful professional, but we all have different definitions of what success is for us and what it should be. So that's why I prefer saying, help you get the career you want to have. So at the beginning, my intention for this workshop was not to do an artistic live demo, create a concept art online, show you my artistic process, simply because I find there's a lot of things like that out there already in classes and tutorials. And I also don't think I'm capable of finishing a concept in 3 hours that is going to kick ass while I talk and answer questions. Instead, I would like to share with you some other essential aspects of being a professional in the industry, things that have helped me a lot getting the career I want to have. And it's nothing crazy, nothing revolutionary. It's very, very obvious things. But I find these topics are rarely mentioned in workshops by professionals and are easily overlooked by younger artists that are trying to start, or they're already starting, as juniors, students, and whatnot. And since when you're starting out, your main focus is being technically better and artistically better more than anything else. It's also things that I would have loved knowing when I was starting out, and that I see are lacking in a lot of the concept artists that I have met along my career, whether they're young or old, very experienced or not. And very few people have I find these sort of skills, if I may say, call them that. So I figured that I should put an emphasis in this workshop. We'll also talk about art and things like that, and I'll show you some stuff. So it'll not only be me rambling about anecdotes and things like that. So what I suggest you do is sit back, relax, maybe start a drawing of your own or continue a concept that you were doing, and treat this as a podcast or an interview that you're listening to, a professional telling you about his life as a concept artist and, telling stories about the industry and whatnot. Like Josh said, do not be afraid to ask questions. I won't be looking that much at the chat, so Josh will take care of that for me. And, treat this as a real opportunity to have a discussion with a professional, So that's it for the intro. Before we start, though, a little disclaimer: I tend to swear a lot sometimes, especially when I get, in the heat of the moment. I usually am very familiar with how I approach and talk about subjects. I speak my mind a lot, so try to take this as with a grain of salt and a big dose of humor. All right, so let's begin. I'll do a small intro about myself. And my career and some of the career path and decisions that have led me here today. So my name is Fred Rambaud. I have been working in the industry for the past 14 years, more or less. I currently work as a freelance concept artist, but prior to freelancing, I've had many hats, and I've had many roles uh, in the industry, in the game industry, which have taught me a lot about this job, this profession. And I think that's the key to being the professional I want to be today. It's my weird and crazy, unusual career path. You'll see what I'm talking about. You know, all the decisions I've made in my past that have forced me to approach my work in a different way in order to basically survive, and not in the usual career path, which is study in an art school or learn how to draw and paint and then get a job as a concept artist and stay a concept artist. You know, we'll get to that a bit later, but to resume, I've been a generalist concept artist, which is basically you do a little bit of everything. I've been specifically, after that, an environment concept artist, character concept artist. I've been a lead concept artist, an associate art director, an art director for two different outsourcing studios. An outsourcing studio, for those who don't know, is usually a smaller company that provides services to game studios or movies or whatever, you know. So like Massive Black, Atom Hawk, Opus Arts, Volta, etc., West Studios, and all that. And they hire an in-house team, and they also hire a lot of freelancers, and you get short contracts. Sometimes those studios nail a longer-term contract, and they help out. Basically, they are outsourcing partners for the bigger companies that are shipping a game. I've also been a full-time freelancer for, I think in total, 5 years, spread across my career. And also an art director, mainly recently in the Borderlands franchise for more or less 3 years, a little less than 3 years. And now I'm back to being a freelance concept artist. Add to all those roles that I've had, I've relocated a lot for work. I've relocated, I think Canada would be my 5th country where I have worked. I've worked in France, I worked in Norway, China, Singapore, and Canada. All right, so that's to give you an idea of the crazy, unusual career path. And I've seen a lot, done a lot. So I think this is a great opportunity for you guys to tap into that knowledge, you know. Can you still hear me, Josh? All good?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
All right, cool. So to give you an idea of what I've worked on, I'm going to go through very quickly some of the games that I've done in the second half of my career. Why just the second half? Because the first 7 years are pretty, I guess, in the past. They were not that interesting. They were really formative. I learned a lot, but not many good things came out of them in terms of good art or good games. You know, a lot of failed games, a lot of failed art because I wasn't that good. Games that were canceled, etc. And I find that when I hit the 7-year mark, that's when my art started taking off a little bit more. I started feeling much more comfortable technically and artistically. And I don't know, I started working on games that were shipping, you know, so I guess that means a lot for me.
Do you think that has to do with like just you getting better and then working at like bigger studios?
I think it has to do a lot of that, and a lot as well as I stopped moving.
Yeah.
So I focused on staying in the Quebec province in Canada. So there's Quebec City and Montreal, where there are a lot of studios. So basically, I created a network, which is something we'll talk a little bit about. I don't think I would have been able to have a bit of success if I had continued moving around. So definitely staying in the same place and working really hard to improve my art made the past 7 years a lot cooler than the first half. So the first the first game that started working out for me was Far Cry 4. It was it was published by Ubisoft, produced by Ubisoft, Montreal. So I joined them, and it was very short. The stint I did with them. Um, I joined as a lead character concept artist, which is funny because there were no concept artists. So I wasn't leading anyone. I think they gave me the lead title because um, I had managed to negotiate a slightly higher pay than a senior back then. And so they were justifying my pay by adding the lead title. But for I think I did 11 months with them. And out of the 4 months, I was alone making the concept artist. Then I hired a couple of guys that came in and helped out. And we were, I think, 2 or 3 guys for the rest of the time. And we churned out most of the concepts for Far Cry. This was I think a very formative year for me. I knew the game was going to work. It looked really nice and it seemed fun. It was like an Uncharted 2 open world in Nepal. So it was very exotic, and it looked good. But I think the mood in the team was really toxic, really negative, and it was sad to see a team being able to produce a almost certain successful product and having a shitty time doing so. So I was really miserable, to be honest.
What do you think contributes to like that toxicity?
In this case, it's a very particular situation. I came in and the production had already started, but they didn't have any character concepts. And all the previous concept artists had left. And then I found out by other people who had been in Montreal for a long time, who knew the core team, who knew what was happening in the Montreal industry. They explained to me basically why I had the job. And it was really interesting. Almost all the concept team were people from either outside the city, myself, another studio. One of the lead environment concept artists was from another studio and desperately wanted back in at Ubisoft. So he took whatever. And this other colleague who was coming from her maternity leave. So basically you go back to the big Ubi corporation and you're put in whatever project, So it was basically a team made of people who didn't know what they were getting into because everybody who knew said no. Everybody knew that team was toxic, that the leads were toxic. I'm not going to go into detail. I've done so in many podcasts in my past. I think I tore them a new one enough. So basically, it was just how I would say how the directors, the producers, any person responsible for a management position, how they were handling things and treating people, basically.
Yeah.
Which is pretty sad. I mean, it's the easy way out. I find you can make a great product with a happy team it's a lot more difficult. Now I know, but if you make it with and your team is sad and frustrated and angry, I mean, that's the easy way out. And it's ridiculous. Everybody's going to leave. You're going to lose talent, but it takes a lot of patience, a lot of time to make sure everybody's happy. So I understand now why some people just don't give a damn and they just get shit done regardless of the consequences, so basically at that time I had to reevaluate my life and my situation, because I was really unhealthy due to the stress and basically the anger I was feeling every day. I did like a sort of introspection, or I don't know how do you say introspection of my career and myself. And I asked myself, how come I was so miserable? Because I didn't want to be a concept artist anymore. To that point, I didn't want to work in the game industry. And I had heard this happens to a lot of people all the time, but I wasn't doing overtime. I wasn't doing anything like that. So I didn't have bad conditions. It was just, I had a great pay. The art director, even though we didn't see eye to eye, and I sort of blame him for a lot of the toxicity, he had a lot of trust in me. He respected me. But it still didn't, the rest was a mess, it was a disaster. The deadlines were insane. Quality was thrown down the drain. Quantity was more important. I could see my colleagues freaking out all the time around me, and they put a lot of pressure on me. So it was like a snowball effect, it starts with a little pebble and then it becomes an avalanche, and everybody is super pissed all the time. So I basically counted how many years I had been happy in those 8 years that I had been a concept artist, because this was supposed to be my dream. And I counted and I reached 1.5 years. So out of 8 years of production at the end of Far Cry, I had been really happy 1.5 years, and the rest was crap. So I said, well, what's the problem? I moved countries, I've worked everywhere. And you realize that maybe you're doing something wrong because you're fleeing all these problems, but you still have problems. So maybe you're part of it. Obviously I was. And so I started thinking about what was I doing that was wrong, changing my mindset. And I realized that is not what I wanted as a career. So I had to basically redefine what I wanted to do as a concept artist. And what type of art I wanted to make. And I realized I was selling out, which has always been a big issue because I'm a big sellout. I guess it's my Latino side. I was born in El Salvador, grew up there for I don't know how many years. I think I lived in Latin America for 17 or 18 years of my life. So when you show me some money, I immediately just go there. So I think, so yeah, I realized that chasing the dollars is not, in the end, was not making me happy. And working, basically taking any type of job as a concept artist, just because it's a big studio, a big franchise, a big name, and you have no interest, artistically speaking, can work in a short amount of time, but I don't think in the long run is going to make you happy. So I started realizing those things, and I spoke to the directors and producers, and I told them I was going to leave, and they even offered me $1,000 per month more in my paycheck, a private office, bigger title like principal, concept artist, franchise concept, whatever that means. When they just don't know what title to give you anymore. And the pay was big back then for Montreal. Montreal is not an expensive place. After Norway, after living in Oslo and living in Singapore, which are two of the most expensive cities in the world, top 10. I came to Montreal, man. Like I had good pays, and the life is good, and so definitely a lot of money, maybe 20K per year more than your average senior concept artist. And I was like, no way, man, I'm not doing this. This is selling out it's selling my soul out, to the devil, basically. It's just, I hated every minute of it there. I was angry at everybody, angry at the bigger directors and all that. And it's like, I'm just gonna go. So I took action. I quit, went back home, told my wife. She got pissed because I didn't tell her. Should have told me. Yeah, I should have. I did not. And we had 2 weeks worth of life money to pay the rent, pay food, school for my kid. 2 weeks. And so I told her, well, we have 2 weeks to find a job, because she didn't have a job back then, because my son had been having a lot of health issues for the past 3 years back then. And he had lived in the hospital with his mom and a lot of stuff like that. So basically she wasn't working to take care of my kid, but now my kid was much better. He had a normal life. So I figured, it's time for my wife to find finally a job, and for me to find another job and scramble. And luckily I had forgotten that Ubisoft owed me some paid vacation. So I had 2 more weeks, and that allowed us to find a job. My wife and myself, in the month, we found other jobs. And ironically, I started working for Ubisoft, but in Quebec City, from Montreal, as a full-time freelance concept artist on Assassin's Creed Syndicate. And that's when I started I like saying that's when I started my freelance career, but if I remember correctly, I had already been for a couple of years here and there, on and off, a freelancer in the past. But this is for me a big turning point, because I really feel that all the boxes were checked. All the important priorities I had were starting to get checked. So basically, I nailed a full-time freelance contract with a big studio on a big franchise. I was doing art that I liked. I was well treated. We hit it off with the team from the get-go, and it lasted a long time. So I basically, out of the blue, I was able to nail long-term freelance contracts, which is something you don't hear very often. I find that if you look at people's resumes, freelancers that share what they work on, it's like, oh, Paramount Pictures, 1 month. I don't know, whatever. This game studio, 3 months. Worked on Bumblebee movie, 1 month, and it's always like that. And here I was having 6-month contracts renewed, so that was pretty cool. I was making good money. I was really happy. And I started to find my love for concept art and video games again. So I was really happy. Basically, I did a lot of things for Syndicate. I did characters, illustration, marketing stuff, props, a couple of environments. I'm not very good with environments. I've been specializing mostly characters these days, because when I did my self-analysis, I realized that I enjoyed characters more. So, I'm doing my best to make the perfect work environment for myself, and that's why I specialize in characters now.
Do you think the industry right now is more geared towards like people that specialize, or people that are more like generalist?
I've done both, and I've had success with both. And I think being a generalist saved my ass a lot of times, and that's why a lot of clients came to me at the beginning, because I knew how to do a lot of things, and I still know how to do a lot of things. I haven't lost. I haven't, even though I haven't done much of this or that, I still am able to do a concept that will be production ready.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you're a very good specialist, you'll get work. If you're a very good generalist, you'll get work. So it boils down to that. And I've been also in positions where I'm hired as an environment concept artist, which happened at Warner. So I went in, was doing environments after Assassin's Creed. I don't talk about the project because it was canceled, but I started as an environment concept artist. 4 months later, somebody realized that I could do characters, and they asked if I wanted to do characters for the game. I'm a big comic book nerd, so I immediately say yes and started doing characters. Then I switched back to environments, but then they say, no, you really need to come back and help us on the characters. All right, I'll do characters. And then I got bored, and I heard that somebody needed weapons. So I say, well, can I try the weapons? And they immediately, you have the producers, like, are you a weapon concept artist? Just give me the damn weapons. So I do the weapons for all the gangs. And then I see that they're having trouble with the outsourcing artist or company that's doing the vehicles. So I am done with the weapons. I would love to try some vehicles. So can you give me some vehicles? What do you have to lose? I'm on a sort of retainer fee, right? I'm being paid every 2 weeks as if I'm an employee, and my contract is a 6-month contract, and I've been there for like a year already. So just give me the vehicles, did some vehicles, then I went back to characters. It's all really fun. You can jump around and stuff like that. So I've had a lot of fun being a generalist, but nowadays I specialize in characters. I've worked a lot to reach the specialist level, if I may say, because usually I think they would hire specialists if they're really good, basically.
Hey, Fred, there's a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I think they're asking what you're talking about. Is this all in WV Montreal? And then
this was in Montreal, yeah.
Okay. And then were there a lot of people on the contracting, a lot of the people on the team that are contractors?
Yeah. I think it's very American to use a lot of contractors.
Yeah.
Usually, I don't know how it is in English Canada, but in French Canada, in the Quebec region, people frown upon. That's my impression. Being a freelancer or a contractor, which for me is the same, and I prefer it personally. My mindset really changes. If I'm an employee, I suddenly get really invested. So if the shit hits the fan, like, I'm pissed. but if I'm a contractor, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm a freelancer, right? There's a problem, everybody's frustrated. Man, it's a party every day for me. I'm doing concepts, and if I don't like it, I get out. What's the problem? So I love it. I love being a freelancer or a contractor. So yeah, American companies in other countries tend to hire a lot of contractors. So we were in that team. We were 1, 2, 3, I think 4 or 5 concept artists under contract, and they had a couple full-timers. Yeah, it was awesome. I loved it. Unfortunately, that game never came out, and yeah, it happens. It happens. Yeah. So after I did a bunch of contracts for Game Lofts, some mobile games, some indie studios. You'd be surprised at how much success indie games and mobile studios have. Like they can generate a lot of cash, a lot of success. So I wouldn't turn down indie game offers or mobile game offers just because they're not AAA console or big PC games. The being a concept artist for those companies is exactly the same as being a concept artist for a big AAA game, in my opinion. I mean, my process doesn't change, my approach doesn't change, and the technology is incredible now that mobile games have amazing graphics. So I don't really see the difference. Yeah, I'm talking about realistic games, not stylized games. After that, I went to work again for Ubisoft Quebec on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. So again, with the same team, same art director. They were so happy with my work on Syndicate, and I was really happy of working with them again. Like, I was just hoping for them to call me, and they did. And I did a year or a little bit more than a year, basically until they said, "We're done with the concepts. This is great. Thank you so much." And was really happy to see how the game came out and everything. And that's why I think staying in the same area is important, because I worked with a lot of studios in Quebec City, a lot of studios in Montreal, and you know how the industry is. I don't know if it's the same in the United States, but here people move and jump ship a lot. So if you work in one studio in Quebec City, and there are, let's say, 4 studios in the city, when the production is done, all those people will probably move to another place, to the other studios. So you got contacts in there. And if you have done a good job and people like working with you, they're likely to recommend you. And then they move to Montreal. Some people will move to Montreal to other studios. So basically you have contacts everywhere, and you're creating your network. And then you go to another place and you do good, and you go to another place and you do good, and you go to another place. And then everybody knows you in every studio. And that's the cool thing. Basically, your name is dropped every time they need a concept artist. So you're going to have a lot of offers, a lot of work. And obviously, this happens if you do good work, if you behave professionally. We're going to get to that. And basically the importance of having a good reputation, because no matter how good an artist you are, if your reputation is shit, you're not going to get a job. You're going to get a job because people will not do their homework and check your background, and they'll hire you, and then they'll realize that was a mistake, and then they try to get rid of you in this problematic way, and then you're basically have a bad rep there, and then you get hired at another place where they didn't talk to anybody, and it happens again. And slowly but surely you start to burn bridges, have a bad rep, and get blacklisted, which happens. There are actual blacklists, so you don't want to be in those. So after Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I had 3 years of full-time freelance. I had a lot of offers, a lot of work, but I made the big mistake that I think everybody does when things go well as a freelancer. I was saying yes to everybody. So that's a big life lesson. I got really burned out. I was able to do 2 AAAs at the same time, which is insane.
There's a quick question about, have you seen someone getting blacklisted, but then they don't get blacklisted later? And like,
yes. And then they get blacklisted again, basically, yeah. Right? I've seen people get out of the country, go work somewhere else, burn the bridge in that other company in another country, get forgotten a little bit, things sort of die down. And for example, in Montreal, come back to Montreal, like through, I don't know, you haven't worked in Montreal for like 3 years. I don't know how you pay your bills. Then you go back to Montreal, you get hired because somebody made a mistake, and you start crapping over a production again. The shit hits the fan, you're blacklisted again. That's it. That's how it works. Like for very specific cases of assholeness, you know. If you learn from your mistakes, then yeah, it's okay. You know, like we all fail. You know, I failed projects, I failed teams. It happens. You know, you make honest mistakes, and I've seen people fail. But if you catch up, if you recognize that you failed and you try to do the right thing and work hard to correct your mistakes, then people realize that you're actually a good professional. And if you're not behaving like an asshole as well, you know, that's the problem, is that those people who get blacklisted are usually socially assholes. They treat people in a very bad way. So nobody's questioning their art if they're artists, or their way of managing people if they're managers. It's just they are jerks. So, you know, no matter how good you are, it's just people get tired eventually. It takes a long time. I've worked with people who I'm like, how did they get here? How, man? Who hired them? Nobody did a background check here. Then you work with them 3 years, they screw the whole production or are part of the big problem, right? Then they move to somewhere else, they get fired or whatever. And then they go work there and it happens again. And we're talking about 6 years already, right? So sometimes it takes a lot to get blacklisted, but eventually you're fried, man. You're burned. So it happens. It's slow, but it happens. So where was I? Odyssey. After Odyssey, so I was burned out because I didn't think, I was so excited getting all these offers, and I got again to the same position where I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not interested in concept art, but not because I was badly treated. This was my own honest mistake. I did too much work, so you just don't want to do it anymore. And so that's a very good lesson. I think nowadays I focus in one project, do the best I can, aim for the highest quality possible that I can produce, make sure my client is super happy. And, you know, when I'm done with that project, when the contract's done, when the client doesn't need me anymore, that's when I'll start looking for another one. And I'll just focus on that one, and so on and so forth. So I was burned out and I wanted to do something else. I'm going to give you an example of how burned out I was. I'm a big fan of all the From Software games, like the Bloodborne, Dark Souls franchise and all that. And I see that their website has an opening for foreign artists. And they say it doesn't matter if you don't speak Japanese. So I'm like, I apply. And to my surprise, they give me an interview and everything. And before the interview, and I'm a huge fan, like hardcore. That's my type of game. Dark, evil shit. That's what I want to draw every day. So I turn around. I remember telling my wife, you know what? I don't even want to do this interview. I don't care. I don't want to draw. I don't want to. Japan, I'm a big fan of Japan. If you know a little bit about my art, I put Asian stuff everywhere I can, mainly Japanese stuff. And I wasn't even interested in moving to Japan. I wasn't even interested in working for them. I was like, I just don't want. I was in a very weird place. And so I started looking at my options because my contract with Odyssey was coming to an end. And I saw that I saw my options, and some old colleagues of mine had founded Gearbox Quebec. So Gearbox opened a studio in Quebec, and they were helming the studio. And I was like, okay, I worked with these guys in the past. They're cool. I appreciate them. I respect them. And they told me about their core team and what they wanted to do. And the core team was people from other studios and other projects that I had worked with in the past. and they were all very good people. So I say, you know what? Maybe I should go back to full-timing, to being a full-time employee. And they were offering me the possibility of being an art director. And it was the only different thing I had as an offer. The other ones were more freelance or in-house concept art. So I said, well, this is the only different one. So I'm going to give it a shot, since I'm sort of not interested in producing tons of art right now. And I moved back to Quebec City, which is just a couple of hours away from Montreal. And I started working with them as an art director in the Borderland franchise, alongside the headquarters studio, which is in Texas, with Gearbox, Texas. So basically, my idea was try to see what it is to be an art director for a AAA game. You've been a lead, you've been an associate art director, you've been a smaller art director, like in smaller studios, outsourcing studios, but you've never been full-on art director for a AAA game in a big franchise like this. And I knew some of the people, so I knew how they worked, how they thought, and if I basically failed, they would help me. They would not let me fail. They would tell it to my face when I was fucking shit up. So I thought it was a risk, but a good risk. Very, very minimal epic failure situation. And it was Borderlands, so I suspected it was going to work and it was going to ship. So I did close to 3 years with them, a little less than 3 years. We shipped alongside the studio in Texas. We shipped Borderlands 3, and in Quebec we did with my teams 2 DLCs, and it was an incredible experience. Extremely difficult, maybe as a professional, by far the most difficult thing that I've ever had to do. Extremely exhausting, frustrating, stressful. I never hit it off with the role. What can I say? Sometimes you like something, sometimes you don't. I thought it was going to grow. It was going to grow on me. I was going to learn to love it, but from day one, I fucking hated it. And last day, I still hated it. So again, had to reevaluate my career decisions, and basically, I really wanted to finish. I really wanted to close the products that I was working on, so that I did. I was really happy to have done that. But I would realize again, I was being a sort of a sellout and just staying in for the cash, for the big rewards. If the game works, you're gonna get a bonus and stuff like that. Company shares, blah blah, and all the stuff that you can get in those cool places. Because the place was cool. I have nothing to say, but the only reason I was staying is cash. That's it. Every time somebody that knew me, that knew I wasn't liking it, said, what are you doing, man? My wife was like, what the hell are you doing? You're not happy, get out. It's like, yeah, but the cash. Yeah, but the bonus. Yeah, but let's wait. In a year, we'll have this. And if you stay 2 years more, you get this. If you stay...
Yeah.
Oh, my God, man. It's like, yeah, they got you by the balls, basically. So I was miserable, and it was my fault. And I was becoming somebody I was not proud of. I didn't like who I was. This is a weird feeling. I felt my identity was a little bit shattered because I wasn't doing anything that I liked, and I wasn't behaving like myself. And I realized that no matter how difficult it can be, I just wanted to be an artist. That was my passion, and I don't regret those 2, 3 years at Gearbox because I learned a lot about myself, about who I really want to be and what I want to do. And I realized I had taken the fact that I can produce art, that sort of gift. It sounds cheesy, but not everybody can draw and paint. Even if nowadays it's a very popular career and everybody wants to do it, it still takes a lot to be able to do this. So I find that I took it for granted, and I didn't appreciate it enough for what it was. The good thing is that because I wasn't producing any meaningful art, I was doing some art, but as an art director who can do art, you still do here and there a lot of little things, but you don't do anything that you find that you're proud of, basically. You just help people be proud of themselves, if you know what I mean. So I started producing a lot on my spare time, which I think is very important. It's vital, at least for me it is. I know some people, they can survive without producing anything, and they're able to give their 150% in each concept they produce at work, which is amazing. I am not able to do that. I need spare time. I need to be, isolated with myself and try to produce some personal work. And that's where I start learning and stuff like that. So for me, it's very important to keep exploring, trying new things with my art, experiment, learn and grow. And it keeps my artistic soul satisfied. Producing only work for hire can be, for me, mentally challenging. So it's very important to keep on creating for myself, to train and learn a lot. I love learning new techniques, new processes, try out new softwares. Even if I suck at 3D, it doesn't matter. Like I try to have fun, and then I use it for work if I keep that process. So I was surprised to see that I was getting the fire back with my personal art, the fire that I had lost during my crazy freelance burnout. And what I find that happened that was really cool is that since I wasn't looking for money, I wasn't looking for a job, I wasn't looking to better my portfolio, I started doing a lot of personal art without a hidden agenda, if I may say. Usually I find that as artists, we pollute our personal art with second thoughts and with things that don't matter. Like, okay, I would love to work on this project, so my personal work has to be tailored into that direction. I would love to do shit like that artist because that's awesome, so I'm going to start copying him a little bit. Oh, Jama made a new tutorial. He's learning a new 3D software, so I'm going to learn that, right? Because that's what's in, that's the trend. And you start doing all those wrong choices. Not really wrong, it's just small issues as professional artists. But I find that you are getting away from your personal identity and where your own art should go, which is based on you and what you feel and what you like, and not what other people are thinking, telling you what is popular and what other games are coming out. So I was just producing art to have fun. It was like, again, you're back in your childhood and you're eating cereals and you're drawing on the floor with the belly on the floor and just drawing on sheets of paper and doing whatever in front of cartoons Saturday morning. That was it. Except I'm not on the floor in front of my Cintiq, probably watching some dumb Netflix show or YouTube or whatever, listening to music, and I'm just having fun, doing nonsense, nothing that fits the industry standards, just doing ridiculous stuff, fan art or doing Easter eggs and having fun trying new styles. And surprisingly, a weird thing started happening. I started getting a shit ton of freelance work.
Someone asked, what was that
Yeah,
chicken thing?
that chicken. This one.
Oh, this one.
This is an MTV show from maybe 10 years ago. Let me see if I can find the chat window.
Alt H.
Oh, yeah. H. I'm going to write it down. That chicken. I think I even have a plush toy of that chicken. Usavich. I think that's the name. Usavich. It's a. I had to watch this in MTV Korea. It was a short animated video, and he had a lot of seasons, and it was insane. And this is the pink rabbit here. This guy is in there, and there's all the rabbits and the chickens in there. And I think it's basically a bunch of bunnies escaping prison, and the show is Russian. But why was I watching it in MTV Korea? I don't know. Anyways, it's insane. So I did, I did stuff like that, and the little kid with the weird mohawk and the red.
I remember that.
And that's Kinnikuman. It's a cartoon that I was watching in France when I was 12, because we lived for 2 years in France, and France has a big culture of Japanimation, and so everybody likes Japan over there. All the artists draw Japanese influence stuff. So I was watching this guy who was not called Kinnikuman, but it was called Muscle Man in France. So I think it was like 4 characters. This guy saying "Eat me," the sort of knight, the guy with the Wolverine claws, all those are from there. The girl, the robot armor girl, the blue one, is Lady Armanoid from Cobra Space Adventures. And anyways, I'm just trying new brushes, trying new processes. And instead of like trying to finish one piece and make it industry standard, like all rendered and presented, and so exhausting to do that. You're already doing that for work for hire. Can you actually, I'm showing the screen right, Josh?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, okay. So instead of doing that, I just had fun and don't finish. So if you're in the same boat as me, where you just want to sketch around some dumb stuff, just do sketch pages like these. Just throw them all in there, compose a nice group of characters, and just drop that and do. I would do every day, an hour or two, because I didn't have a lot of work, a lot of time. Sorry, I have a family. I try to exercise, try to keep healthy. So I just do. I used to do little sketches and then compile them, and at the end of the month, I would have 4 pages like these, and I would just dump one post per month in ArtStation. And for some unknown reason, man, I don't understand. I mean, I never expected this to happen. It worked. It got shared everywhere. I got offers, and I was surprised because this is really not, in my opinion, industry standard stuff. So I realized I was reacting with the perceived notion that I only should do what the famous people are doing online, which I think is a terrible mistake. Now I know, right? I think that if you do things that you are passionate about and you put a lot of love into them and you're honestly having a shit ton of fun, it's going to show in your work. I don't know how, don't ask me. It's an abstract concept. It's going to show in your work. And for some reason, people are going to be entertained, maybe, I don't know. And it's going to have much more impact than if you do another fucking orc, another fucking toaster head, or another fucking environment with a Scottish castle. or another speed paint of a tank in the desert. So if you keep on doing that, obviously, I guess you're lost in the sea of generic posts. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing rendered shit, maybe, I don't know. So maybe this, in its awkward, quirky way, stood out, basically. It stood out. And, and I was just having fun and doing whatever I wanted. So if you want to do Scottish castles, screw me and do your Scottish castle. But you understand what I'm saying, right? It's don't do things because you think you have to do them because other people are doing them, because you think a company will react if you do that. Just do what you love, drawing and painting, and don't pollute yourself with all those notions and impressions that you have.
Someone asked,
yeah,
how do you maintain consistency?
Consistency in what way? In producing regularly, I suppose.
Let me ask. Yeah, just keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, this is another test. Trying to create brushes that have a little bit of a pencil or ink type of look.
Sorry. Yep. So the person asks, how do you maintain consistency in your inspiration? So, it's not like there's so many good stuff out there, right? And we're like, oh, look at that. That's really cool. How do you like hone that down?
I've never had this problem about, I suppose he's asking something like, how do you stay inspired and motivated to continue to produce something and keep that consistent, I think. I've never, sorry, but I've never had that problem. This is what I love doing. So it's reached a point, if you ask me what's my favorite pastime, I'm going to say this is it. It's doing concepts. It's drawing. It's. I think it's past gaming, which I'm a big gamer. I love gaming. I think it's when I'm in the zone and I'm producing and I'm happy, it just destroys gaming. It destroys partying. It destroys watching an amazing movie. Like, this is the top of my list. So this is what I want to do all the time. So I don't have that issue, right? If I could do it more, I would. Sometimes I force myself not to do it because, back problems in your 40s. So, yeah, it's, I stop because I want to have a balance. And I want to exercise. I want to relax. If I didn't have a family, if I let go of all my healthy habits, I would stay in front of the Cintiq or draw traditionally or paint or whatever. I would produce every single moment of my life. So I don't have that issue. And if you have that issue of saying, I want to draw or create whatever, and you get all excited, and it's Friday night and you're like, okay, shit, tomorrow I'm doing like this and that. And then you wake up Saturday morning like, fuck no, I'm not doing it. I just don't want to. Just do it. It's so dumb. You have there's no trick. There's no magic process to get you inspired. I don't even look at other artists' works anymore. If I look at our station, I'm in the bus commuting or in the toilet taking a shit. I don't surf the web, or I'm bored. I'm an art director at Gearbox, and I'm bored, and I'm like, just checking our station. I don't want to go into a meeting or some shit. Yeah, I don't surf social media because I don't want to draw what they're drawing. I think we tend to zone in cool shit, popular shit, and then we do it. in our own art. I really need to stay away from that. So I try not to do too much surfing. I have favorite artists that I go look every couple of months, you know, that get me fired up. It's I'm going to use an analogy, a sports analogy. I think it's analogy is the correct term. You know how they say you just go to the gym, go exercise, go to whatever. You don't need to feel motivated or to want to do it. Just do it, you know. So it's the same with art. Anything you want to accomplish will only come with hard work and a certain mileage and repetition. So just go ahead, do it, do it, and do it, and you'll fail so much. I fail. Let's say I post. Imagine I'm gonna say a random number. I post one image per week, which is absolutely not the case. But let's say I post one image per week that I consider is worthy of posting online, or I'm sort of more or less satisfied with it because I don't think anyone's satisfied with their art anytime. But for that image that week, there are maybe 10 images that I trashed. So you will do a ton of shit. It just doesn't matter. And you're just exercising. See it as an exercise. You know, if you go right now and you swim, you start swimming with a coach, you're probably gonna get out of the pool and puke, which is what happened to me when I started swimming. So it doesn't mean that I failed that day because I died and I vomited and then whatever. It's just you were training, you were exercising, and eventually you won't feel like shit anymore after a session. You'll feel super good and everything. It can be anything else. Like try drawing traditionally. It's a disaster all the time, and you're gonna make. There's no undo. There's no layers. You have to erase everything again. Same for painting. So it's just just don't bother with the failures. So don't bother with feeling down. Don't bother with not wanting to do it. Just get to it and get it done. You know, put in the hours.
There's a quick question about
Yeah.
by Pan. How much media do you consume? Like
A shit ton.
shit ton.
I watch a lot of movies. I don't work at night, and I don't do overtime. So it's very rare if I work overtime. I just hate it so much. So I just do a sort of 8 to 5 type of day. I watch TV. So by TV, we're talking about Netflix, whatever, TV shows or movies I watch every night. I watched a ton of YouTube. If I'm designing, I can't watch anything. I just need to listen to music and music in general without lyrics. So just ambient soundtracks or whatever. And if I'm rendering something that is okay and I don't need to be fully concentrated, then I put some YouTube videos about whatever. And then I play a lot of games. So unfortunately, I don't have much time for that anymore. So I play at the most nowadays, maybe 5 hours a week if I play that week. So sometimes I can go months without playing anything, like 6 months, because I don't have time. I still buy the games, which is funny. I have Resident Evil 2, barely started the thing. Sekiro, I just played like 30 minutes. I have so many games. I want to buy Resident Evil 3. I have Dark Souls 3 that I haven't touched. Final Fantasy 7 is coming out. I mean, I'm a big consumer of games, and with a very diversified taste. So I buy a lot, but I'm not playing much. And then I read a lot. I read a lot of fiction, read a lot of comic books. Like I said before, I'm big comic book nerd from from since I was a kid, and I read comic books from North America, Europe, because my father's French, and he always had like French European comic books at home. So it's cultural for me. Like it's part of my way of life. I have a shit ton of art books, a shit ton of comic. This is half of my books, art books only. These are not comic books. There are a pile of books all over the house, near my bed, in the bathroom, here on the side. There's stuff over there, stuff close to the TV. It's like the book that my son leaves Legos everywhere, and I leave books everywhere on the floor because there's no more shelf space. So yeah, I read a lot. Yeah. So. All right, so that's for my very long introduction. We're gonna develop more some of the topics we've mentioned here and there in the course of the workshop. If no one has another question, I'll get to it. I'll quickly talk about basically what is a concept artist, very short. It's obvious, but I find that people tend to forget what it really means to be a concept artist and what the role is in terms of a company. Then we'll talk about the main skills to be a successful professional besides art, besides drawing, painting, 3D, whatever. Things that I find are overlooked nowadays. Then I'll show you, I won't do a demo per se, but I'll show you some concepts, and we'll maybe quickly talk about them, analyze them a little bit, and go through very quickly my thought process. And then we'll do a quick last question session. And that's it.
Before you start, I was wondering if you can just answer one question about relocation. So Celine asked, I have a question concerning relocation. How do you go about it being European? Is it even conceivable if you don't have a contract before moving? And is there
going to Europe, you mean?
Yeah, and is there a reason why you want to move and seek work outside of France?
It was funny because at one point it was like, how do you conceive being European? How can your brain accept the fact that you're a European? Going to Europe, I don't think there's any problem in actually going anywhere. Especially if your nationality, if your passport is from one of the easy to move countries. I've been really fortunate. My father's French, so I have the French passport. But I grew up in Latin America. My first language is Spanish. My second language is French. And thanks to that, I had the opportunity to move to other places. But if your passport is from a Latino country, it's going to be a bit tougher to get a visa. If your passport is American or Canadian, I don't see the problem.
I think the question was, why go to the US being a European artist? And I actually have a lot, because I work with a lot of European artists at 343, and they have their reasons.
All right. So France. Okay, I'm going to talk about France because I don't know the other European countries, but basically France has a lot of artistic talent. There's a lot of artists out there. And there is no work, as simple as that. The industry there is, at least when I was there, was non-existent. The PlayStation 1 had peaked and it crashed. All the studios closed. There was no job. To the point, and this is pretty crazy, you have no idea, and I know I sound like an old grandpa, you have no idea how fortunate the guys that are starting out right now are. I didn't even know that what I wanted to do was called concept artist. That's how little information was accessible to me in France when I was in my 20s. that's why I started my gaming career at 29. So I had to get the fuck out. Like there's no other solution. You have to get out. If you want to be in the gaming industry, back then, at least for me, you had to flee, escape. And obviously Norway wasn't my first pick, but they were the guys who hired me. Why do many Europeans move? It's because if you think about it, there's a couple of studios in Germany, mobile studios, maybe one or two console studios, a couple in Spain that they just don't do really well. You know, so it's a hit or miss, mostly misses. France, they have a couple in the recent years that are not doing so bad, but there's not enough for everybody. And then you have Guerrilla Games in Amsterdam and a bunch in London. London has a few and a couple others here and there. And what are you going to do? You're French in this case. Canada, like it's the obvious thing. And we're one of the biggest video game hubs in the world, Montreal. And they speak French. So if you're French, it's going to be easy for you. So that's why a lot of French go to Montreal. And then if you go to Montreal, you meet a lot of people. There's a lot of foreigners. There's a lot of Americans. And you start looking at this huge North American industry, and you start to looking at all the studios in the States. And it's very attractive to just say, hey, I'm going to try going to the States. You know, it's super attractive. All the cool stuff is almost all the time in the States, all the studios, you know. So, and I find that French people are not afraid to travel. So there's a lot of them everywhere, unfortunately. So that's why. But in my case, Latino, born in Latin America, moved around all my life. As a professional, 5 countries, 7 cities that I worked in, or 6. And in all my life, I think it's 9 countries, because my father was traveling all the time. So I've had the relocation bug all my life. Like a year after my birth, I was in another country. A year later, in another country. 2 years later, in another country. 3 years later, in another country. So for me, it's normal to move. Now I have a kid. I stopped moving. I mean, he was born in Singapore. We moved to Quebec when he was 1. And then I stopped. I don't count Quebec, Montreal, Quebec as a relocation. It's just there, you know, it's next to each other. So I don't want to put my kid through what I lived. Not that it was a bad thing, but I remember it being pretty sucking a lot, changing schools all the time and being the new kid all the time. That was not fun, especially in Latino countries. You know, it's pretty rough. France was pretty rough. The schools there, pretty rough. Basically, you have to eat them before they eat you. So that was my approach. Yeah, I don't, you know, I thought I'm not going to do that to my kid. And we stayed in the Quebec province. And even though I love some of the European gaming studios, some of the Japanese gaming studios, Korea, and even China, they're making really cool stuff. The US is making a ton of stuff. You know, I figured it's easier for me to get an offer and to relocate as an in-house concept artist, but I don't want to relocate for a job that I am eventually going to leave, because it's not in my profile to stay there forever. So I prefer working really hard, improving my art to the point that it has no other option than to catch the attention of studios in other countries, and they contact me and they get me jobs. It's really hard because you have to basically work your ass off every fucking week without exception, unless you take vacation, of course. But to take vacation, you have to work like a crazy person to pay your own vacation. So you're basically working a lot all the time. It's I like comparing again, sports analogy. Freelancing is like being the crazy CrossFit guy that has no other option than to podium because he's got to pay his bills with the money of the competition, and you have no other, you know, you can't fail as a freelancer. So you always have like the knife on your throat, and I guess I do well in those situations. It keeps me sharp. If I don't get a contract, if I don't satisfy my clients, then my family doesn't eat. So work hard, you know, get enough art out there of good quality that attracts clients from all over the world, and you won't need to relocate. I wouldn't recommend doing that at the beginning. It's been close to 15 years for me. So yeah, eventually, if that's what you want, you got to understand the sacrifices that come with it. All right. All right, so let's get to it. What is a concept artist? So it's, let me see, I've got my little notes. Where am I? Yes, here. Basically, I think people tend to forget what it is. At least I know myself that when I started, I didn't understand what it was exactly, and it took me a bunch of years to actually nail it. And I think it helped me to be a lead. So I understood when I got back to concept art. Every time I was a lead, I would learn a lot, and then I went back to concept art. And because I had been the client as a lead, you're basically a client for a concept artist. I knew what was needed of me and expected of me now that I had been in the shoes of a lead or director or whatever. So this is how I perceive being a concept artist, right? So to put it simply, our jobs is to, as a concept artist, is to produce visuals to help your client's needs. As simple as that. You are basically at the service of the client and the team. A concept artist is not a fine artist. It's not an illustrator. Even though you will have to eventually do illustrations, keyframes, like key images for the CG team, animation team, marketing team, whatever. Now and then, the majority of your tasks revolve around creating production concepts, generating tons of ideas, and then creating production concepts of those ideas that are approved. Your task doesn't stop there. You have to follow up the concept from A to Z, assist the respective design teams, 3D teams, animation teams with any changes, extra concepts, add-ons, corrections, and any other things they might need along the way. It doesn't finish. It doesn't stop when you get, oh, this character is approved, polish it nice. You know, you're thinking about posting it on our station when the game comes out. Yeah, this is awesome. You know, putting a rim light is completely useless. And then it gets approved and that's it. No, you got to follow it. It's your responsibility to make sure that the game asset that is going to be created out of your concept works, right? So the main problem I see in concept art, that I used to do this, I suppose I'm still guilty of it sometimes. I let my guard down and I do these mistakes. But the main problem I see is the mindset and how they perceive themselves and their role and their priorities. I think a lot of us just want to do beautiful concepts, beautiful paintings, and post them online. When in reality, our job is to just provide great ideas, produce high quality concepts, respect deadlines, and assist with any other need that the client or team might have, and keep a professional attitude while doing them. And then if the game comes out and you have permission to show the beautiful stuff you design and created and spent hours painting or whatever, then that's just a cherry on top. It's not the end goal. The end goal is the creation of a product. You're helping a company create a product and sell that product to generate money to basically continue doing that, you know? So this is basic. It's so obvious, but we're never thinking about this. Never. I wasn't thinking about this until years of being a lead and a director. Then I started to switch my mindset. And I find that by doing that now and having that approach and being as available as possible towards my art directors and clients, to the point that they know they can count on me and they know they won't get attitude from me. They just want to work. They, by nature, they gravitate toward people like that, and they want to work with them. We're going to get to that right now with the skills that, in my opinion, are essential, you know, to be a good professional. And the main set of skills is what they call soft skills, right? So soft skills is essentially it's your behavior. I would say your social skills, behavior. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions just to hopefully spark the thinking process in you guys. So what is the difference between an artist and a professional? So we already touched on what is a concept artist, but let's clarify this quickly again. So an artist is a person who wants to satisfy his need to produce great art. A professional is someone who wants to help and participate in the creation of a successful product. These two aspects are, in my opinion, incomplete by themselves. And if you join them, if you have those two personality traits, basically, you become very powerful. So again, what is your role as a concept artist? Let's go over it again. It's to satisfy your client's needs, not your artistic needs. It is to assist your art director, realize his vision, and by his vision, remember that your art director is not the sole sort of divine entity that has control of the look of the product. Absolutely not. He is under other people in the game, in the floor, in the production floor, and he's also part of the core director team, and his vision has to match the game director's vision, the creative director's vision. If it's an existing IP, it has to respect that IP. But to resume and make it simple, I'm just saying that your job as a concept artist is to help him realize his vision. Basically, you are his right hand. You have to assist any art lead and his specific department by providing the necessary type of concept and whatever else he needs. A lot of people, and I've done this, and my concept artists have done this to me, and I find that this is really unprofessional. If you have the lead animator or the lead character modeler that comes in, or whoever, and he goes straight to the concept artist and he's like, hey, I need you to do this and that. I've done the following, and my guys have done that as well. There's like, yeah, but you're not my boss. My art director is the boss. And I understand where that comes from. And we'll go like, don't tell me what to do. You're not my lead. Your role is to help him. He's another type of client that you have in the production. If you feel uncomfortable by doing that, you just say, okay, yeah, no problem, but let me confirm with my art director just to make sure, and that's it, and keep it cool. So basically, soft skills, communication and behavior skills, those are the two most, in my opinion, underrated skills a concept artist should have. And why? It's because we're all focusing on our art, on how we draw, how we paint, what are the cool ideas, what 3D software should I be learning, what's in. A couple of years ago was 3D Code, then it became Moto because some popular guys are using Moto. Then now the same guys are using Blender because, so that's what we're sort of honing in. And it's normal because what we do is visual. And everything is judged by that artwork that we're going to produce. All our identity as a professional is judged by our visual work. So that's why we never focus and train the other aspects. But, any person who works relatively hard on their art can become a good concept artist. So in my opinion, it's just, I don't consider that to be the most important aspect of our jobs. It's just like flexing a muscle. You want big biceps, go to the gym and start lifting weights and just do biceps and you'll be good at biceping, So it's easy. So it's easy to, by hard work and putting years and years and years into your art, to become a good artist. But communicating, it's what will make you a good professional. It's what will make people want to hire you. It's what will build your reputation. So communication is what you do all the time. If you think about it, you're communicating with your client and your teams through visuals that you create from briefs that were communicated to you. Then you must explain your concept when you upload because you always have to explain. So this is this guy and he's had a robot arm because I thought, So you have to sell the idea, defend your idea. That's communication. If you're not good at it, chances are you're probably not going to be as good as you could be, even if your art is amazing. So I would urge you to think about the following. You have to basically think about how you present yourself, how you present your work. So your own image, if you come in at work and you look like crapola, it's dumb, guys, but it influences a lot the people around you. How you present your work, this is insane. You make a good concept and it's just on a maybe messy canvas full of notes and sketches and stuff might not fly with your art director or his team. Remember that he might not be an artist, or he is an artist, but he's working with people around him that are not educated, and they need to be impressed, they need to be sold into the idea, right? So sometimes how you present your work can kill it or make it succeed. How you speak, again, communication. I was working with, like when I started being an art director, my biggest challenge was being affirmative, sure about myself, and not insecure, and man, it was terrible. I was terrible. I was always nervous, always stressed, always doubting myself, and it showed, and people felt it. and just trampled me over, you know. And so I had to learn to do that. And I had a concept artist that was incredibly talented, an amazing artist, and an amazing technician, which is extremely rare, and with a great sense of design, sense of painting, drawing, colors. I mean, like, Jesus, seriously, this guy was ridiculous. But he was incredibly bad at presenting his work. He was messy as hell. He would lose files. To hell with naming convention. He couldn't find his files. Like, where is it? I don't know. What were you doing this morning? That looked amazing. Oh, I don't know what happened. You know, it's like, it's a fucking mess. It's a fucking disaster. And he himself was really bad at communicating verbally what he was thinking, and it was a mess. And I think he was basically sabotaging his own art, which is insane in my opinion. So I think that's very important. You can't just be a good artist and, you know, forget about everything else and hope for the best. No, you really have to pay attention to all the little things outside the beauty of your work. So no matter how good your art skills are, your reputation is extremely important for your success. Again, like I said before, a bad reputation can sabotage great art really fast. So just keep an eye on that. Always try to behave in a professional manner. Learn very early to communicate well. It's like everything. You just need to exercise that muscle, train that muscle. And you don't know what I mean by professional, just common sense on how to treat people around you. Basically, don't be a jerk, right? Don't look for trouble. Don't be a jerk. Try to not be negative. And this is coming from a very negative person. I am extremely negative. I've been dragging an angry guy nickname from country to country. When I moved to Norway, I was angry French guy. When I moved to Asia, angry white guy. When I moved to French Canada, it was either French asshole or Mexican rage or something like that. Because for people in North America, I suppose that every Latino is from Mexico. So either one of the two, right? So newsflash, I have anger issues, right? So realize what your social issues are and try to either censor them or tone them down or work on them, whatever, but don't be a jerk. As simple as that.
Nina asks, what
Yep.
about if you do freelancing at the start and sign up to do really fast, not quality work for somebody? Can that come back and bite you in the future?
I suppose, yeah, because you're gonna be, either the client is going to use you only for fast work and never for polishing, which eventually you want to do, or you never finish your concepts, you know, you want to finish them, because online sketches sometimes don't sell well. So how can you sell yourself online better? I guess you would have to do all those fast sketches for your client, and then at home you would do the full process and post that online. You can get yourself in a easily pegged with a label. Oh, she's the girl who can't polish, you know, which will eventually come true if you just do something. Eventually you'll be good. Actually, you'll be good at doing fast concept art. At the beginning, it will be low quality, but if you do that all the time, you'll get faster and you'll be doing better quality, right? But it's still very dangerous because you're going to be labeled, and you're just going to be working one muscle, and you need the whole range to be able to start and finish a concept. It's interesting, the question you asked, because one of the things I did at the start of my career was work on my speed. Uh, I wasn't a good, I was always the guy who knew how to draw in his family and in school and stuff like that. But when you get to the professional level, you suck. So I sucked at drawing, I sucked at painting. I mean, I was unable to paint, add color to anything. And that thing followed me maybe for 10 years of my career. And so the solution I saw when I was in Norway, because every guy had at least 10 years experience on me, and they were all very good at drawing, painting, designing, you know, the understanding of what a game needs. And you can't do this, you can only do that because in 3D or animation or the constraints or the budget, you know, all that stuff you have to eventually learn. And so I was, well, how can I beat these guys? I mean, not beat them because it was impossible. I was a junior, but how can I compete and be a valuable team member? And I said to myself, well, I'm very creative. I can see that my creative muscles, and we'll talk about this very soon, are really strong, and I can generate ideas really fast. So I'm going to work on my speed in order to draw these and sketch these really, really fast. So while they are showing 4 to 6 nice whips or 2 very good polished images, I'm going to be showing 10 amazing ideas, right? They're not going to be artistically superior, but there's going to be a lot. And I started doing that a lot. And I got really fast, produced a shit ton of work. My design sense, I'm going to talk about this later, got better. And then, but then it went so high, the difference between my artistic skills and my speed sketching, let's say, and design sense, the gap was too big. So I was able to do very good sketches, very fast. Clients were really happy. And the moment I had to polish, it was a disaster. So I started working on polishing, finishing, foundation training, drawing training, painting training, which is really important. And I still do. I still do that every week. I do every day, actually. I do. Let me find something here. Every day I do 30 minutes. I don't know if you can, let me see. Let's see, my webcam. 30 minutes a day. I don't do this in 30 minutes. Obviously, it takes me a shit ton of hours, but I train foundation training. So these are simple bar plate copies in graphite. I do 30 minutes because I don't have much time. So 30 minutes a day. I do that at the start of the day. I do, if I'm not doing anything like this, I'm doing little studies, you know, anatomy studies, 30 minutes. And then I move on to my work. So you're going to ask why 30 minutes. I believe in the 1% increment rule. When I was younger, I would do 2, 3, 4 hours, you know, spend a shit ton of time doing something. You go to the gym, 2 hours. You have to like game, it's like 4 hours. You know, it's always that mindset, dumb. I think it's dumb because you won't be able to do that every day. You can't possibly maintain a family life, a professional life, personal art, whatever, and train 2 hours like a crazy person at the gym, and then do 2 hours of foundation training. It's not going to happen. So you're going to do 4 hours on a Saturday. I laugh at those guys like, it's 4 a.m. I just posted this. I'm dying. You're not going to do that every night. You can't sustain that. And at the end of the year, the guy who did 4 hours, 6 hours, and went to bed at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning every now and then will have just a group of hours. But the guy who does a little bit every day, man, the math is insane. Like the amount of hours you will compound at the end of the year if you do a little bit every day is insane. This is insane. So 30 minutes a day, foundation training to keep my drawing and my painting skills basically going up, because that's because of the fast sketching focus. That's what's been my weakness. And I have to say 14 years of, is it 15, maybe 15 this summer, but let's say 14 of professional concept art. And I finally find I am starting to draw and paint a little bit better and how I want. I'm getting there. Like I feel like I broke a ceiling, a level, and I'm starting to have a bit more control. And it's something I'll never stop doing, because I'm really far from what I want to produce. So I lost a little bit where I was. Oh yeah. So we spoke about the reputation. Let's see, what's this? Yeah, this is a very big one for me. What your art director is thinking. We have a lot of imagination as artists, but I am sure we are never actually thinking about what is this guy thinking, except for complaining. You know, what is this fucker thinking with this shit? I find that in order to be a good professional, you have to sort of project yourself in your client's shoes, your art director's shoes, or whoever is asking you for something. And this I learned by being a lead and being many sorts of art director in the course of my career. I think that to keep it simple, your art director or your client, basically they just need your help. They need your assistance, if I may say. It's as simple as that. Your art director has a problem and he's coming to you with the hopes that you'll find a solution for him that he can present to his team and get shit done. Mainly what they're thinking is, I hope this guy or this girl, this artist will be able to do what I need him to do. That's it. That's simply what they're thinking. And that's what I learned the hard way by becoming a director. Imagine what it is to be an art director for a second here. Imagine you're an art director and you've spent your day in frustrating meetings, meeting after meeting, arguing with other artists, arguing with producers, because you don't agree with their fucking planning that they, you know, I don't know where it came from. I'm not going to say it, but I'm thinking it. Arguing with other leads, other directors in the game that have a lot of power and say over how things look, because everybody does, right? Everybody knows what looks cool. And you're trying to put fires out. You're correcting a shit ton of things that are wrong. You're correcting mistakes or trying to correct mistakes from other people, arguing all the time, listening to people bitch constantly, and trying to keep the production going, hopefully towards a successful product, and trying to make people respect the direction that was decided at the beginning as well. And on top of that, you have to find a shit ton of a shit ton of solutions for some visual problems that you have, that your team has. And imagine after a crazy day or a crazy week like that, you have finally come up with something that might be doable, as an idea, you know, and hopefully every other in that meeting, every other director, lead, department, whatever, it fits, right? It fits the planning, it fits the vision of the creative or game director. It's okay for the character modeler guy. It's okay for the animator. Okay, it seems like, wow, you have something. Okay, so imagine, okay, it's pretty cool, right? Well, no, because now you have to go and talk to your artists and explain to them the situation and try to get them to help you visualize with concepts that potential solution you have. Maybe they can bring an extra layer to that and make it even better. And you're hoping that one of them will be artistically and technically capable of doing what needs to be done. And the layer that used to kill me is hoping that they won't start bitching and complaining and behaving like divas, because you know what, they don't like that task, or that's not what I like doing. I don't like that idea. It doesn't look cool. Give it to somebody else and whatever. So try to think like that when you're a concept artist, and you'll be able to react with a better attitude when you see your leads and your directors coming to you. So by that behavior, by that negative behavior, giving attitude, complaining, being a diva, the concept artist basically just created another problem that the art director has to solve on top of the shit pile he already has to solve. And that is exactly what you do not want to be. You do not want to become another problem that your client has to solve, because that's going to just say immediately, I don't want to work with this guy anymore. That's it. It boils down to that. You're not going to get called again. And honestly, I've made all the mistakes that you can possibly make as a concept artist. I have been lazy. I have been arrogant. I've been insolent, disrespectful. But I think that I've been capable of evolving and questioning myself, and questioning myself in order to improve and learn from those mistakes, and always try to be adaptable, to anticipate potential issues that can arise, and remain cool, remain professional. Your reputation is your biggest weapon that you have. That's it. So that being said, we have 1 hour, I think 1 hour, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to go over very quickly. Let's see what I think the other very important skill is, which is design. We're going to talk about it, how I approach design, and then I'm going to show you some concepts. Okay, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Again, like I said before, we're all focusing on our skills, right? So drawing, painting, etc. How to paint and draw beautifully, how to imitate traditional art. That makes me laugh, and I do it all the time. I want to make it look like a pencil, like oils, and it's just, you're using a computer. What are you doing? You're making CG. Back when I started, this thing was called CG, computer generated graphics. And now it's like art and things like that. I'm not saying it's not art, but it makes me laugh that a big, super powerful machine with tons of software is doing a lot for us, and we still want to make it look like traditional. So we see a lot of incredible things in ArtStation, right? We talked about it. We see a lot of amazing, beautiful pictures being produced. It's insane. It's insane. Like how many people are creating amazing concept art of all kinds and sorts and illustration work. So how can you, and honest to God, man, they're a million times better than me. So what can I do to stand out and to get noticed and to get the work contacted by clients from all over the world, like we were saying? And how, after that initial contact, how can I show to the client that I'm actually a good professional and he wants to keep on working with me and not with the guy who paints better than me? So I think that you can set yourself apart with your professional skills, your soft skills, like we went through right now. We discussed about it. And the other thing that you can do is, in my opinion, have a strong design sense. So that is a bit abstract because I think design, in my opinion, is very abstract. Nobody talks about it. There's classes here and there, like form language, shape languages, all the good schools in the States, like they offer courses like that. But at the end of the day, it still remains, in my opinion, very abstract. For me, design starts with your ideation skills. So all your creativity and imagination to generate ideas. And in my opinion, again, this is very personal because I haven't found a definition of design that fits my approach and how I perceive things. So I'm going to share with you how I perceive it. In my opinion, the main visual components of a design, of my designs, are basically made by silhouette. That's the main silhouette of the concept I'm doing. And inside that silhouette, there are main shapes, secondary shapes, from big to small, right? And the same with the level of details, tertiary, secondary, primary level of details. That's a very, very naive and simple way of looking at this. So let's get into it a bit more in depth. So for me, design is basically the visual signature of an artist. You can call it style, touch, personality, whatever. Design is everything that makes an artist as well, like his education, his cultural experiences, his personal tastes, his influences, inspiration, personality, and most importantly, imagination, right? Because your imagination, your creativity takes all that, who you are, where you've been, what's in your head, and just throws it down, reinterprets it, and you put a concept out there, right? Put all that together and in a visual, and you have a design sense that, in my opinion, is very personal and unique to the artist that has created it. So, for example, the proportions you choose for a character, that is design. If it's not photoreal, you're exerting your design sense on the proportions. If you add decorations on an armor piece, that is design. The costume design, clothing, haircut of a character, that's design. All those choices you're making, where to place the details on a hard surface plate, that is design. So to prove my point, I've never been the best artist in a team. There's always somebody who draws and paints better than me by a lot. But I find that I always get sometimes the more important tasks or the cooler shit, or the art director comes to me with the, hey, Fred, I really need to do this. And it's just like the big stuff, right? So, and I've deduced that since there's people who are artistically better than me, the fact that I'm able to generate more ideas faster, and that they're like more interesting ideas, it gives me that edge against people who can paint and draw better. And if you have a little bit of experience in the industry, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's always the guy who does a shit ton of line art but cannot paint. Like, he cannot paint for, like, he won't. It's not going to happen. But his designs and his sketching and his ideas are just an insanity, right? He's a machine. And then you have the guy who's like doing the amazing environment art, and it's so beautiful and painted, and the other artists who can do amazing female characters with beautiful skin, and so right there's and if you start looking at it, the guy who designs draws a lot, cannot paint, and the guy who paints very well is always doing generic stuff, like the castle in Scotland. Or the tank, the speed paint, very beautiful speed paint of the tank in the desert, like with the sepia colors and the red shadows. Those guys are doing that, and the designer is drawing. So I've always been the guy who draws a little bit more. And at the end of the day, yes, they want a beautiful picture, a beautiful painting, but they first the idea comes. So I think that's why this design skill is very important. So, and you can always do my path. That is, I focused on the design and drawing, generating a lot of ideas first, and then I started, when I was comfortable with that and I was settled in my career and secure, I started training drawing and painting, traditional stuff like foundation stuff, and doing all the tedious work that nobody wants to do in order to improve my drawing and my painting skills and make them look like beautiful aesthetically. So, in my opinion, how can you improve your design sense, right? This is very abstract, and it's not gonna sound very interesting, but honestly, it works. For me, it works. This is how I do it. I try to increase the quality and the quantity of my visual library. So what I call a visual library is basically all the information you store in your brain. In this case, I was going to say visual information, but it can also be just information. We're going to get to that. So every time you see a movie, play a game, look at an art book, you store info in your brain, and that is your visual library. References that you see, that's your if you travel, visual library, right? You store the information. So step one is that I divide it in different categories. So the first is let me see. So the first one would be human anatomy, anything that relates to the human body. Second category is creature anatomy, so all the animals, mammals, invertebrates, fish, amphibians, etc. Third category is anything nature, so vegetation, landscapes, rock formations, geology, astrology, whatever. Fourth, anything man-made, so anything created by man, so fashion, architecture, vehicles, props, etc. Step two is that I try to, depending on what I'm working on for myself, or that I find interesting at that moment, or that simply I'm working on, as simple as that, I try to gather information. So for example, when I was working on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I had to research a lot, Greek civilization, clothing, weapon design, props, etc. So I gather a lot of information, and that allows me to understand what I'm drawing, have a bit more knowledge, and your concepts will look better, right? So I improved my design sense in antique Greek civilization in order to better fulfill my role as a concept artist. I read as simple as, National Geographic. It has a lot of stuff from sociology to history to architecture, biology, technology, whatever. So I don't read like a crazy person every day, but again, I use the 1% increment rule. I would read maybe 10 minutes a day of the magazine, and it's enough, And then if I want to really focus and zone in on something, then I'll do some research, etc. Watch a lot of documentaries, like Planet Earth. Now we all know those, so all of that stuff. So And the third, so I separate them in categories to keep it simple. I gather information about those specific subjects. And this is the third step that I do, is a weird one. I read a lot of fiction. So to the point where I had to stop buying books, stop buying novels, because there's no place in my house. I have these towers of novels everywhere. So I read fantasy, science fiction, horror. Why? Because I believe, and this is, I know for young people who don't read, this is horrible, but I think that this is the key to improve your design sense. And I'm gonna get to it. It helps you develop your imaginative and skills and creative skills, and improves your design skills, and especially the speed at which your brain can create ideas. Why? Because every time you read something with no visuals, your brain is creating the visuals for you and all that imagery to just help you visualize the story. It's as simple as that. It sounds so simple. You're reading a book and you're creating the hero, you're seeing the villain, you're seeing all those images very fast in your brain. And if you do that, if you read a ton, you'll have a shit ton of concept art. Basically, everything you read, your brain is creating a concept. So when you get to a client meeting and you have to, the client is yapping about his brief, I'm already at least 5 concepts ahead. And I already know what to do. And I just sit down on my desk. Maybe I'll search for reference for 30 minutes to an hour, because I know exactly what I want, because the concepts are already in my head. And I'll just drop them on the canvas, and that's it, you know? And this is a very abstract concept, but if you like reading, read more, try it out. I used to do exercises when I was younger where I would read a book that I was really into and I would do all the concepts. And that's great. And usually it's stuff that hasn't been done, like on ArtStation, you know, it's not generic stuff, unless you're reading a book about elves or something, and dwarves and orcs. Writers have a really weird way of describing things, and sometimes they try to create very unique things that are generally not cliche in the world of concept art. So give it a try. I think it's much more powerful to do this because your brain is generating visuals that are fresh and unique compared to only watching movies, games, and basically feeding your brain what everybody's already seen. You know, you're watching superhero movies, you're reading comic books, you're watching TV shows like, Altered Carbon season 2, you know, Infinity, you know, Avengers and Sekiro or Resident Evil or Last of Us 2 is coming up, and everybody's like eating that shit. So everybody's just like producing the same ideas all the time. Go try to feed your brain stuff that other people are not watching or not eating, right? So sounds logical, but nobody does it. You know, everybody's just like surfing ArtStation, watching the new TV show.
How do you balance reading and other forms of consuming media with creating and studying art?
How do I balance all that?
Yeah, like art, or, you know.
Yeah, so that's basically scheduling. I read 10 minutes in the morning, the National Geographic thing. I read maybe 30 minutes before bed, fiction. I do 30 minutes of traditional studies as a warm-up before I start work. So it's not that much. I just 1 hour and 10 minutes, you know, and I already covered reading fiction, reading, I guess, general culture, if we talk about National Geographic, and I did my studies. If I want to add personal art, I have to take away the studies unless I have a lot of time. In general, I will do just 1 hour, maybe 1 hour of personal art. I'm not interested in doing 3 hours. I'm incapable. I'm dying. I just did 8 hours of focused client work. I have a family, I have a kid, I exercise. I did all of these other things. So If I have time, 1 hour of personal art here and there. Keep it consistent. There was a point where I was doing 1 hour every day, but I wasn't studying. I wasn't doing my traditional studying, or I left it to 1 hour on Saturday, 1 hour on Sunday of foundation training. So you gotta just find little moments here and there. You don't burn yourself out with 2, 3, 4 hour sessions. Just 30 minutes to 1 hour. Be consistent, and at the end of the year, you will have much more mileage, much more hours than the guy who tried to do 4 hours here and there. So the last, almost the last topic for design. I try studying designs I like and trying to understand why I like them. So again, I believe this is a very personal thing. It basically represents a lot of our personal taste. So studying this, recognizing what designs you like will help you strengthen your identity as an artist, because you'll see, oh, I really like this stuff. If you're able to say why, it's good, but if not, it's fine. But at least you'll know that specific helmet shape you're always doing, that specific shoulder shape, you really like that anime that you saw, that robot, or that temple when you traveled, blah blah, and you try to absorb that and reinterpret it without just blatantly copying it. But sometimes you'll do, and unconsciously you'll just redo a shape that you really like. So that will strengthen your design skills and help you understand your own tastes, your own signature, what you like, and define a stronger personal style. And also the opposite, it will also show you what you're always doing. And if you don't want to do it anymore, it's very easy to say, I'm always doing that. I'm always doing some weird shape, and it's starting to get annoying. Recognize what you're always doing and be able to change it when you don't want to do it anymore, And understand that a lot of our tastes come from nostalgia and what we used to like in our childhood. Recognize that and either push it away if you don't like it anymore, or strengthen it by embracing it, and making it part of your design sense. And the last step here, I think graphic design and motion design are amazing to teach us about design a little bit more, because I think they're some of the most dynamic and interesting visual disciplines out there. Their aim is to immediately catch the viewer's eye in like one shot. It has to be simple, powerful, have tremendous impact, and deliver a clear, strong message. And why? It's because readability and balance are very key in these disciplines. So if you have time every now and then, like once a month or once every couple of months, just go and see what are the biggest trends in graphic design and motion design, and try to see how you can incorporate that into your clothes design or your shapes, and how they compose their images as well. And to finish this chapter, very quickly, some design rules. You try to have, the first one is try to always have a clear focus point in your concept. So make sure the focus point in your concept is clear. That means your image has to be readable, and you should never sacrifice readability for aesthetic reasons. I have a tendency to add a shit ton of detail to my concept, and sometimes it's just too much, and focus is blurred. You don't know where to look at. Be careful with that. Direct the eye. Second rule: direct the eye with strong leading lines. Make sure the main lines of your drawing direct the eye of the viewer where you want him to look. Then scale, hierarchy, and balance. Always compose the main shapes of your concept as if you're composing an illustration. Find the right balance between their size and shape in order to get the most impact out of your design. Hierarchy here is the arrangement of the main components of your design in order to visually signal their importance and where they stand between each other, right? So for example, the face, the torso, the hands, we're always told that's the most important things in our characters. So they should have an importance, an order of importance, which is what I'm talking about, the hierarchy. And you should balance the level of contrast and focus between all of them in a certain order. So you might, for example, make a more important element bigger and bolder than a less important element, which might be, in this case, smaller and fainter, the contrary contrast, and try to use this rule about scale, hierarchy, and balance in every aspect of your design. So not only for your shapes and the scale, but for level of detail, contrast, colors, visual languages, etc. Have areas of rest, which I mentioned. Don't over detail all of your concept. You have to balance it out. Which areas do you think should have more visual information than the others? And lastly, repetition in design. We've heard this a ton. I still make this mistake a lot. I create a lot of noise and tons of detail without thinking. And by mistake, I end up having inside my concept different design languages. By that, I mean, I'll show you, I think I'll show you in a concept. When your design is all jumbled up, you can't make sense of it. It's probably because you have too much noise, too much information, and you're using more than one strong visual language. If you put 100 circles, 100 triangles, and 100 squares, and you mix them all up together, it's a pizza, right? It's a mess. So in this case, all those geometrical shapes are a specific design language. So you have to choose your main design language, right? And compose it. So I'm gonna make this triangle base. That's my main design. So there's a big triangle, and maybe you add a smaller square, right? And maybe a tiny circle, and you have your big, medium, and small shapes, and you have a hierarchy in a design language, and they're not fighting each other. And lastly, use the rule of thirds. I know this is a very simple concept, but dividing and balancing your concept by using the rule of thirds as if you're composing a beautiful painting. It's a great composition trick, but it's also useful in concept art. For example, if you're, we've all seen the dividing of your painting in rule of thirds instead of perfectly symmetrical things, So if you're designing an armor plate and you're perfectly dividing the torso in 3 equal shapes, it's not going to be as interesting as if you have one big shape, one medium, and one small, or a big third and 2 similar. It's very basic things. Okay, so let's show you some concept art. Can you see my Photoshop?
No.
No? Okay, let's see if I can share my Photoshop. Can you see it? No?
No. Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So we're going to go through quickly what my process is. This is how I basically start with these very faint. Got my shit ton of brushes. So basically this is how I start. I don't show this to a client. This is for me. I'm just trying to very faintly find a vibe that I'm looking for. When I have a vibe that I like, in this case, I chose this guy here, I start to try to refine that image that I have in my head. The essence of the image I have in my head, I want to quickly try to understand what it is, right? So I like the sort of gait he has, and I did a big arm here, but then here I sort of made a weird shoulder shape as if his arm is cut. I don't know where I'm going with it yet. Who knows? And then, oops, sorry. Then I continue refining, right? I do a bunch of, can you see this one, this new one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I continue doing, different heads. Maybe should I cover it? He lost an arm here. I do some profile. This is a shape, that I'm always doing. So I know you're talking about design here. This is a big shape with no details. And then you have more information here with smaller details, then a bigger shape, sort of in the same family of this one. That's what I'm talking about when you have to sort of decide where to put the details. I'm not putting detail in this area, right? This is an almost empty area here, right? Why should I put detail there? So I'm focusing here in the torso, keeping the legs with cloth a bit more simple. And then I go into the refinement stage, simple black and white concept. So the guy has no arm, basically a sort of classic cliche skull type of head, but I try to give it a twist in order so it's just not a simple human skull slapped in there like we all like to do, so I try to find a way to making it more animalistic or primal or whatnot, but it still has that same skull vibe, in my opinion. It is basically just a weird sci-fi helmet. I give it some Japanese vibe with this, with a little knot, clothing. Then the rest is sort of pretty much sci-fi, but he's got a man bun, so maybe samurai. So I go in and give him a samurai detail type of stuff, and I give him 2 swords. And for some weird reason, I gave him a monster arm. Don't ask me why. I guess I was reading too much Berserk. I'm always doing this. I'm always doing this big mouth like in Berserk, and also Guy Davis, the fantastic creature designer and comic book artist, that he does insane creatures. So I'm really inspired by this guy. I'm going to leave it here. So so he became a sort of wandering sci-fi samurai Ronin guy with a touch of too much Dark Souls and Bloodborne case. And this is a stage where I probably send to my client, this type of stuff here. So I guess this is generating with dark essence, is generating the arm. And that's another thing I do. I always try to add a twist, which leads to a lot of failures. By twist, I mean, how can you take something that everybody has seen and give it a little nudge so it goes in another direction, but it generally ends up being too crazy. And like I said, there's a lot of fails involved. So yeah, it's a win. Sometimes it's a win or lose situation. Oops, it's a smaller one. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Okay, so this is another lineup with a different type of arm that I made. That I made here, like a white sort of alien-ish type of arm. The same guy. This is they're here up close. And quick little variation page, like some heads, side view that I think is is the strongest type of shape that you can have with this type of head. Some ideas for the arm that maybe it can transform into a weapon, and it opens up. I'm doing a lot of pedal shapes these days. So this could be a pedal, more pedals, more pedals. You know, here, the same. We find some of these shapes, even in the torso. I like doing a lot of overlaying and layering between, overlapping between the anatomy of the characters. So I always try to put layers upon layers. This is a good example. Again, we're talking about balancing your detail. So these are simpler shapes, and there's a lot of detail here. Don't put it everywhere. Try to have the same visual language. So we have those sort of plates that I was mentioning. Could be plates, could be seen as flower petals, scales, and whatnot. So we're finding that visual language everywhere on the character. Going to show you something else, like the fat baby guy, like this guy. This is a good example of what I mean by trying to find a twist in my work. I started with this sketch, basically. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was doodling. I wanted to do like a sexy urban sci-fi cyberpunk type of girl, where everybody's doing that. And at one point I'm like, well, everybody's doing it, you know? And this is not me. I don't do girls like this. I felt that I wasn't, my art, what I am, is not being represented. I didn't know what she was doing. She was maybe playing a game, and maybe I was gonna add this little guy here projected here, like an hologram or something. And I was colorizing her, like being red and white. It's like maybe she's Snow White, or maybe not. I don't know. So maybe I give her some little dwarf guys, and then I started doing these guys, and then I started saying, well, these guys are cool. She's not. Like what are, you know, what's this? Why is she doing? Does she have that? This doesn't make any sense. And maybe I'm overthinking it, but this is not working for me. It doesn't have anything that grabs my attention. It's just me being a concept artist, you know, me being, me doing stuff, random stuff that might look cool. But these little guys have a lot of personality, and they have that Asian touch that I'm always trying to add. And I just went to Japan, and my brain just imploded with all the information. And so I'm like, well, this guy's eating ramen. This guy's crouching. He's got like, I lived in Singapore. Everybody was like wearing shorts and wife beaters and crouching with their cigarettes and drinking stuff. So this guy's like drinking, you know, a little something. And I was like, well, this is getting somewhere. So I'm going to take the girl away and take the girl away and give the little guy a companion, right? And I'm always trying to look for scale contrast. And I thought, well, let's make this guy huge, and their buddies, and like this guy's eating his ramen, and like there's this giant guy, and I gave him some sci-fi stuff because that was the deal. And I made the sort of weird mask thing. And where did this guy come from? I think if I analyze this, it's like, well, I went to Japan trip. I saw some sumo guys, and I watched Spirited Away. I didn't watch it, but I went to the Ghibli Museum. And I don't know if you remember that movie. In Spirited Away, there's this giant baby that's just wearing a sort of small undies or wraps or whatever, and he's amazing. So I said, well, let's make a giant Sumo Baby. And how can I, so that's a twist already, right? There's this little dude with a weird head. It doesn't make any sense. And he's got a sort of astronaut thing going on with the head, but he's like wearing shorts and he's made of tech muscles and he's eating ramen. How is he eating? I don't know. And there's this big guy, and that's giving a different color. So I made him sort of reddish, and I added the tattoos, and I thought he had a lot of personality. It's like, well, what's his relationship with the little guy? Well, maybe he's a robot. He's a mecha. So he's a mecha vehicle companion thing. And so this little guy just opens up the cockpit, which is the mask, and then he's got his little seat there, and the big guy just drops him in there. And I remember the Men in Black movie had some sort of thing like this as well. And it's just different, but it's familiar because we've all seen little skull soldiers. We've all seen sumo. We've all seen Yakuza. We've all seen robots. And then you're just jumbling it up together, try to find a balance and trying to make something unique out of something familiar. And what this does is that your art, even though it's not, look at how rough it is. Like, just basically doing this, you can see it's a sketch, and it's not up to the standards of popularity of finished super clean render, but it still gets a lot of traction because you're showing something that is not seen every day. So it immediately stands out. And I'm not doing anything complicated. I'm just taking stuff that I like, taking stuff that everybody knows, and just combining them together. Let's check this one out, for example. All right, so this one it's a mecha, but it doesn't look like a mecha. But it has a pilot. It has a sort of seat or control pod or whatever. It has, I'm into flowers these days. So it has the petals of a flower. So I'm doing a flower. This is like a flower. Maybe some leaves or whatnot. Repetition in design. Oops. Repetition in design, right? We're seeing the same shapes over and over. Even if this shape and this shape are slightly different, they're still familiar between each other. They still seem like they could belong together. I add small spheres here, and I add a big one here, but I don't add a ton of spheres and then some more triangles and stuff, right? There's a balance, and if you think about it, there's a rule of third applied here, right? Right? That's it. So I'm trying to compose. I'm trying to add all my small details here. I added a ton of little details. I'm adding the petals that are holding the person. I'm framing her with these little tentacles that are reminiscent of the big tentacles. I'm adding other tentacles here. Spheres inside, circles inside of circles, the sort of petal-y shapes that I'm using everywhere inside the sphere. They're here. And if you think about separating the elements, we're seeing a repetition of shapes that are reminiscent of rule of thirds and a contrast between heavy detail areas and areas of rest. So I'm trying to compose everything like that, right? So this is a robot flower thingy that this girl's basically driving. So instead of doing the usual, Pacific Rim dude with the human torso and the legs and stuff, I went in and did another type of robot. but it's a robot, you know, simple as that. I'm grabbing flowers, I'm grabbing sci-fi, organic sci-fi, and trying to make a robot out of it. And I love tentacles and insects. So what does this make you, this is a familiar shape. We all know this, right? So it is a larva, right here. So it's a familiar shape that you've seen a lot, but made into a tentacle extremity sci-fi robot thingy. Right, it's a flower. We've all seen this shape. It's a flower. So I'm building, again, grabbing different topics that I find are not seen together all the time and often, and just creating something. And last example, I didn't do this. Can you see the pyramid head guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so Pyramid Head, everybody knows Pyramid Head. He's a villain from Silent Hill. And I'm not a big fan of Pyramid Head, but I find it illustrates insanely well a lot of well-balanced design concepts. So let's just quickly analyze this guy. So the main shape here is obviously triangle. There's a triangle here, which is the main focus point. And inside that triangle, there's another triangle and other diagonals. They're strengthening the message, you know, the point of this. And if you think about it, his arms are sort of in a diagonal triangular shape. His body as well, thanks to the cloth. Inside the cloth, we have triangles and strong diagonals creating other triangles. The sword is a big elongated triangle creating negative space in the shape of triangles. Even the base at this, with this camera angle, is a triangle. So this is a perfect example of how to use one shape and do a repetition and place it, create an entire concept with it. And rule of thirds. And also hard surface, this is your main focus point, and this is soft. We see this is soft skin. So immediately this shape is winning the battle of contrast and is attracting your eye because everything around here except the sword and the base is soft. So it's a very simple way of sending the message, right? This character here. And it's unforgettable. You see this once and that's it, man. You remember this guy forever. And so I think this is a good example of something very simple, very powerful. Cliche, because we've all seen the butcher guy, sorry, with the axe, the meat cleaver, chainsaw, whatever. We've all seen this guy. They just slapped a freaking pyramid on top of his head, and everybody went nuts, and you freak out when you see him coming. So they grabbed the horror butcher guy and slapped a triangle on his head instead of the classic metal mask or skin mask or what's the other mask that they use? Like sometimes they have a sadistic leather mask with spikes. Sometimes they have the mask that you use when you're welding something, a welder mask, something like that.
So Ella asked,
Yep.
Is there a minimum and maximum number of genre you would smash together?
Rule of thirds. So try to compose all the genres or yeah, like try to do it with the rule of thirds and choose one that is more stronger than the others. For example, in this one, I didn't do it on purpose, but I think the flower shape is maybe stronger. Then I added it's sci-fi, so that's how I will treat the surfaces and the shapes. I guess, you know, that it could be could be also said that the organic parts are stronger than the hard surface parts, because everything is more or less 100% organic here, except maybe some very small parts in the sphere, which is a pure geometrical shape. Try to balance it out with the rule of thirds. Choose the one genre you want to dominate. In the baby, it's the fact that he's the big fat baby, you know. Then there's the fact that he's actually a robot, and small details like that, you know. It's like, oh well, he's got some sci-fi parts on him, and he's got some tattoos. That's just dressing it up a little bit. Yeah, try to balance the genres, what I call visual languages of your concept, by hierarchy. Again, the scale hierarchy and balance rule. Try to always balance it out. Which one is the strongest one? Which one is the one you want to be the strongest one? All right, and I think that's it for the art part. I think we can answer some questions, and
Okay. So there's 3 questions from before. Fikal asked, do you think it is better to base my portfolio on a project, for example, a specific sci-fi story, than make a scattered portfolio based on skills? So, for example, a portfolio of a bunch of different environments.
This is a very good question, and I had prepared a list of more or less 7 questions that I get asked a lot, and this is one of them. I think it depends how good you are, where you are in your career, and yeah, basically those two. Because if you are settled and comfortable, just draw whatever you want, right? But if you're starting out, you have to, I would say, zone in into something, focus on something. I believe you will have higher chances of being hired if you zone in into one specific topic, and then you'll be labeled, like I said before, you'll be like the sci-fi environment concept artist, right? So only studios that are looking for that specific profile will contact you, right? Not a fantasy studio is going to contact you if you only have sci-fi stuff. And why do I know this? Because I did the same. When I was looking for concept artists, I was looking for concept artists that did exactly what I wanted them to do in their portfolio. And it pisses me off, because I know I can do other shit as an artist, but if it's not in my portfolio, a client will consider that I cannot do it. But as a client, when I'm hiring, I'm guilty of that. I do the exact same thing. Why? Because I don't have time to waste supposing what you can or cannot do. I need you to start running and be efficient immediately. So I will hire people that have clearly the specific skill I am looking for. And if, let's say you choose, well, I'm going to do sci-fi because it happens that among all the things that I can do, that's the one that I do better, right? So obviously you love vehicles, but you're not the best at vehicles. You're better at environment sci-fi. Don't choose the vehicles, choose the environment. You want to get in there fast, right? So do 5, let's say, maybe not even 5. You can do 3 to 4 beautifully done sci-fi environments for a client to understand you can do sci-fi environments. And then if you're done with it, you don't want to do anymore. Some people just do the same thing over and over. But if you're not and you want to change topics, then do 3 fantasy ones and 4 horror ones. And then the client will see, wow, this guy has range. It's gonna, I don't know, it'll take you maybe 2 years after work to do, or studies to do that. But after 2 years, you'll see, you'll go from this guy can only do sci-fi environments to, wow, this guy is a solid environment concept artist and can do basically pretty much whatever. And they'll love you for it, you know. Even if they only need sci-fi environments, the fact that you have them and other stuff makes you more impressive. You know, it's like, oh shit, this guy can nail it. So when we're done with the sci-fi project and we change completely the theme of our games, this guy can stay. So it's a win. Focus on one thing, get good at it, get a job thanks to that skill, go home, train something else until you get good at that thing. You can put it in your portfolio and get jobs with that second skill as well. Then repeat. Go home, learn a third skill that you want to learn. Obviously, don't be... Fred said I had to learn 3 skills, so that's what I'm going to do. No. Go home if you're interested in doing vehicles and you do environments. Learn how to do vehicles, put them in your portfolio, be able to work and earn money thanks to that second skill. But then, I don't know, you love characters, you dream about doing characters, and so you train your ass off for 5 years, and suddenly, booms, you're an amazing environment artist, you're good at vehicles, and you can do also characters when there's a need for characters, you know. But not everybody wants to do that. Some people just want to focus on environments, focus on characters, focus on, and it's fine too, you know. You're free to choose basically what you want. You know, what I always say is ask yourself the right question. And this is for me as well. And all the bad decisions I've done, it's because I haven't asked myself the right question. So in the end, there's only one question that matters, is basically what type of art do I want to make? And when you answer this, it will tell you all the answers to all the other questions you have. So for example, if I say I want to do dark fantasy and I want to digitally paint it, not use photos and not use 3D. I'm not saying that those are bad things, but that's what you want, right? That's what makes you click. That's what moves the needle for you, makes you happy. So, well, that tells you what? That tells you the topic you have to work on, the style, even the style. It's realistic, stylized realism, like, I don't know, Adrian Smith and stuff like that. Like, so you're gonna digitally paint as if you're doing it traditionally, right? And render that and draw, paint, just dark fantasy subject themes and stuff like that. And that'll tell you what tools, what processes, what quality bar to aim. And you've chosen your goal. You have a clear mountain that you have to climb, right? It will, if you decide, well, I want to be a 3D concept artist and I want to specialize in props, weapons, vehicles, and anything hard surface. So that's the type of art I want to make, and I want to make it as realistic and high end and AAA as possible. And you know, I want TV jobs and game jobs and movie jobs, and people are going to be blown away by my hard surface design. Well, I would suggest you learn 3D then, you know, and stop drawing with Photoshop and trying to paint everything by hand. You know, go and learn as much as you can about 3D, as much as you can about rendering, about design, and how to present your stuff, product design, and lighting and everything. And then that'll tell you what type of path you have to choose. Just by asking yourself what type of art do you want to make, you're answering the questions: what type of artist do I want to be? What type of tools do I want to use? What is the quality that I'm searching in my art? What should be my inspiration and my references? You're answering everything with just what type of art do I want to make question, right? So that's it.
So we have 4 questions. So Elric said, do you think when you're still learning, is it useful to break down and study your favorite artist's work?
You'll always be learning forever. I'm 43. I'm still studying. I know a lot of people who don't study. If you're not able to give 150% at work, like I mentioned before, like I had a concept artist at Gearbox. He gave his all. Like you could tell he was giving 150% in his environment paintings. And so I don't think he needed to study at home. And sometimes he did study a lot, but there were periods of time because he had a wife, a kid, and everything. He can't study. But to answer your question, uh, um, I think that yes, if you're learning, if you're starting out, break it down and try to figure out how that person is doing it. Don't post it in the internet. I would say don't post the study of a digital artist that exists because it's weird. You can, what is well seen though is posting studies of masters, traditional oil painters, classical masters. People do a lot of studies of those. So you can break it down. It's a great way to learn. You can break it down and you can post those. But let's say if you like a famous guy right now and you just like post a study, it's weird. Don't, I would advise to not do that but yeah, break it down. Go home. You're like, okay, I really like this guy. This is exactly what I want to do. I don't understand anything about what he's doing. So just break it down, try to analyze, like just choose a topic like colors. Today, I'm just going to analyze colors. Tomorrow, I'm going to analyze design. So I'm just going to look at all the shapes, how he balanced it out. And then I'm gonna look at the big silhouettes, and then I'm gonna look at how he designs this, how he paints that, how he renders this, how he models that, and you'll soon be able to just do it by looking at the work and not necessarily by copying it or putting a lot of time trying to figure and reverse engineer what he's doing. When I started, I would do that. When I started, I was copying a lot of existing artists, and I don't do that anymore because what happens is that you improve, but by copying a lot of one person, you just become a sort of pale, mediocre copy of that artist, and it shows. And I've been told a lot by when I was starting out, up to maybe the 5 first years of my career, I've had art directors goes like, "You just did like this guy," and they would throw in the name of a famous guy, and you're in an interview, man. You're like, "Oh fuck, busted," It's not a copy. I didn't steal anything at Ripple, but it's clearly heavily inspired. And sometimes they're standing out like a pimple in your portfolio because it's not you. It's just not you. You're using a mediocre copy of his design language, of his shapes, of his colors. Actually, Josh, I think one of your art directors is Nicolas Bouvier, right?
Yeah.
So that guy was the guy in France. He's French. And for my first job in Norway, I go in and I had some spaceships. And they were clearly heavily inspired on his amazing work. And the art director is like, classic French guy, right? You're French, so you're copying the biggest French artist out there. He's like, come on, man. And I was like, ugh. And that has happened to me a lot. Like one of my biggest I was going to say allies in my career is like a guy who's hired me a million times, who actually hired me for Gearbox. He told me once, hey, that's like Greg Capullo or something like that, a comic book artist from the Spawn, from the Image 90s and early 2000 era, that was drawing Spawn all the time for Image Comics. And since I am a comic book nerd, what did I do? I just would copy all day long that guy's work. and it was still following me decades later. And I got super pissed when he told me that. Like I remember, I was seriously offended. You nailed it. I was busted, man. He found me out. Like he called me out of my, 15-year-old bullshit that I had done for ages. So
here's a quick
master.
question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Who are some of your favorite authors and favorite books? Just like a
Oh
couple.
my God. I like. I used to like. Okay, I'm gonna say what in whatever generation I've been. It's like I've been reading since I was 14, so there's been a lot of things that have changed in my life. But when I was younger, I used to love the Forgotten Realm fantasy books about the Dark Elf, written by Salvatore. Then I got older and I read all the emo vampire and Rice books, and then I started reading. I read all the cold stuff like Isaac Asimov and Wells, and I read one that I always remember is Robin Hobb or Hobbes, Robin Hobb, and it's the assassins, the fool's. I can't remember the fool's assassin or something like that. The Assassin trilogy, and there's at the end it becomes like 12 books or something like that. That one was pretty impressive and big book, so you have to hold down. Then I obviously all the Tolkien stuff for fantasy. Some that I've read recently. I've read what's his name? Marbury, I think is he I read basically a book about called Patient Zero. Patient Zero book. Jonathan Marbury, I think. Jonathan Marbury, and it's the Joe Ledger series of books, and there's like 12 or I don't know how many, and it's nowadays set in current like I don't know realistic Earth, let's say, and it's a secret agency of the government that is charged to solve, if I may say, the X-Files, the weird cases. And it starts with an insane zombie pandemic, which is funny, what's happening right now, and so how they fight to keep the infection curve and what happens and all the symptoms and stuff like that. And then there's crazy action. So if you like military stuff and like teams of badass military, like the sniper, the big guy, the explosive experts, and all, they're all together fighting this stuff. It's pretty fun. And then I read a magician, sort of a series of book about magician. It's sort of weird. It's like Harry Potter, but adult. He's an adult. He lives in Detroit or Seattle, actually. I can't remember, Chicago, or like, and he's all sleazy and dark, and but with a lot of humor. Harry Dresden, I think it's called. Harry Dresden, the series, like I don't know how many books, 12, 15. I'm reading a lot of Star Wars novels. They're a bit old right now, but I sort of kind of like some of the bounty hunter, more cool looking Star Wars. So I'm trying to read some of those. I've read so many I can't even remember, man. I'm like.
So here are two questions.
Yep.
Selena and Cala Romero, just about like getting jobs.
Yeah.
First one is, do you recommend reaching out to art directors? And if so, how should you do that properly? Or should you just apply online?
I wouldn't reach to art directors because a lot of people do. When I was an art director at Gearbox, I would try to reply to everybody, and it's not possible. It's not possible, guys. And the the better you get, the less you do that actually. And people who do that are starting out. So I would only get applications like that I don't know how they found my email or my LinkedIn, and they would just be students or aspiring concept artists or very junior people, because they're the ones who go through all that trouble, right? A guy who's getting traction online and who's got jobs, he's not going to do that. He doesn't care. You go look for him, right? So I would advise not to do it. I did it. I did it all my young years. My throat is super dry. I did it all my young years, and I find that nobody answers. Nobody cares. They don't have time. I would say work your ass off and post online and post regularly. I would post once a week. If you can't, there are some weeks that you fail. You won't have it. Like you'll be, oh my God, this piece is a disaster, so I'm not going to post it. So you lost a week. It doesn't matter. You have 3 other weeks, and if you fail, you have 2 other weeks, and so on. But yeah, posting regularly online, getting better, trying to work really hard, is I think key into getting noticed, and people will contact you. I know it's super tough, but if I managed to do that when there was no cool art community online, just some shitty forums and no information whatsoever, you can do it now. You can do it with all the stuff, all what you have access to, Yep.
If you had to start over from the beginning, what would you study as priority if you had 2 to 3 year period to truly level up and to get an entry level job?
I think if I had the money as well, like if there was no constraint, like I could do whatever, I would probably pay one of those awesome schools in the States. Like if I had the money, I would go to either Art Center. I'm not sure if Art Center is still good. I honestly don't know. But I would go, if not, I would go to one of those crazy schools, private schools, like the concept art.
And you think character would still be like your priority?
The what would I do? I think I would do environments.
Really? Really? I wasn't expecting that actually.
Why? Because you're just making one hero and a bunch of reusable enemies. Right? Reuse is a word that you will hear forever if you work in the game industry. Budget as well. So, but you're making a shit ton of environments and props. So if you want to get your foot in the industry and you don't really mind, focus on environments. And I didn't mind. Like when I started, I wanted to do everything. So I didn't have any problem with that. I was better at characters, but I always had to do everything. So also, when I started getting better at my environments and I put them in my portfolio, I started getting a little bit more traction as well. But honestly, if you're really passionate about characters and you don't give a damn about environments, just focus on characters like a beast, and just, but in my case, I love to do everything. I prefer doing characters, but I still enjoy doing a vehicle. And sometimes I draw environments. It's just I never show them because they look like shit. Yeah, but if I was in my 20s, if I was like fresh out of high school and I'm 18 or 19 and I can go study whatever, this is like kill it. I was just like, I don't care what I do. I just want in. I want to be a badass artist. I'm going for the environment route, and I get a job. Like I said, get a job, and 5 years, 7 years later, I'm a kick-ass character concept artist as well because I worked my ass off. That's what I would do. I wouldn't worry about. You can learn so many things along the way.
So I think this is the last question before we end the workshop.
Yep.
In Finland, there's rarely any junior positions open for concept artists. So would it be easier to like go into a different field or get hired as a 3D artist?
How about relocating?
Okay, yeah.
That's what I did. There wasn't any jobs in France, let alone in Latin America. I mean, come on. So I went to Norway as a junior because they needed a junior, and I was there. It wasn't that bad, Got hired and went from there. Don't be afraid of making a move.
Cool. So yeah, I think that's it, man. Thank you for doing the workshop.
Hey, thank you so much, and sorry for the never-ending talk.
Oh no, we did pretty well on time. We actually passed the 5 o'clock mark. So
nice.
Okay. Yeah. With that said, yeah, thanks everyone for joining. We'll probably, if the lockdown still happens, the next workshop will probably be online and free again. So.
All right.
And with that said, I'm gonna end the meeting, and this will be recorded too. So
all right.
Have it still.
Thank you so much, Josh.
Okay. Bye.
See ya. Thank you.